Hello! Mabuhay! This is Teacher Lourdes, and this is your course, Environmental Science. Our lesson 7 is Energy Flow Through Ecosystems. The objectives of the lesson are discuss and explain the following: photosynthesis, laws of thermodynamics, and decomposition, and state what you have learned in this lesson. This video will use YouTube videos which discuss photosynthesis, laws of thermodynamics, and decomposition. Let us watch the videos.
In order for a plant to grow and survive, it has to carry out photosynthesis. This process takes place in the leaves, and more specifically, the subcellular structures called chloroplasts. Within these structures is a pigment called chlorophyll that can absorb light, which you can think of as little packets of energy. And it uses this energy to convert carbon dioxide and water into glucose and oxygen. We can also write this equation using chemical symbols, where we'd have 6 CO2 molecules combining with 6 H2O molecules to make a single molecule of glucose, and in doing so also give out 6 O2 molecules. Notice that we've written light on top of the reaction line here. That's because the reaction requires light energy for it to take place. Whenever energy from the surroundings is used to help a reaction take place like this, we call it an endothermic reaction. And in this case, we could say that energy is transferred from the environment to chloroplasts by light. We've already looked at where the plant gets these reactants from in our video on the leaf. But to quickly recap, the carbon dioxide diffuses into the leaves through the stomata, and the water is taken up from the soil by the roots, and then transported to the leaves via the xylem. Now, the only product that the plants really want is the glucose. They do also sometimes use the oxygen for respiration, but there's so much oxygen in the air anyway that it's not too important. The glucose, though, is essential, and it's used mainly for 5 things. One is cellular respiration, which breaks the glucose apart to release energy. So you can sort of think of glucose as a battery. Photosynthesis traps the sun's light energy in glucose molecules, and then other cells around the plant can break the glucose apart again to release that energy when they need it. The other 4 uses all involve making something out of glucose. For example, lots of glucose molecules can be combined to make cellulose, which is a complex carbohydrate that plants use to strengthen their cell walls. Glucose molecules can also combine to make starch, which is another complex carbohydrate, but it doesn't have a function as such. It's just a better form of glucose for long-term storage, because it's more compact, so you can fit a lot more of it within a cell, and it's insoluble, which means that it won't draw water into the cell through osmosis, like glucose would. Most plant cells try to keep a good store of starch, so that they can break it down to glucose later, at times when photosynthesis isn't happening so much. For example, during the night or in the winter. Another use is making amino acids, which they can do by combining the glucose molecules with nitrate ions, which they get from the soil. And they can then combine these amino acids to make proteins. The final use is making oils and fats, which can also be stored as a future energy resource, particularly for seeds. Because glucose is so essential for plants, their growth rate is often dependent on how fast they can photosynthesize. So in the next video, we'll explore the factors that affect the rate of photosynthesis, which are light intensity, temperature, carbon dioxide concentration, and the amount of chlorophyll. That's everything for this video though. So I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.
So there are 4 laws, that is 0th law, 1st law, 2nd law and 3rd law. Let's say A, B, C are 3 bodies and A and C are 2 bodies are in thermal equilibrium with each other, and B and C also in thermal equilibrium with each other. Then 0th law say A and B will also be in thermal equilibrium with each other. In other words, if 2 bodies are in thermal equilibrium with 3rd body separately, then these 2 bodies are also in thermal equilibrium with each other.
Next is first law of thermodynamics. First law of thermodynamics state that
Energy can be converted from one form to another form with interaction of heat, work and internal energy. But it cannot be created nor be destroyed under any circumstances. Mathematically, it is represented by total change in internal energy is addition of heat exchange between system and its surrounding and work done by the system or on the system. This second law. In second law of thermodynamics, there are two statements, that is Kelvin-Planck statement and Clausius statement. Kelvin-Planck statement says there cannot be heat engine which is working with single thermal reservoir and producing work. Now let me tell you another statement, that is Clausius statement. The Clausius statement is for heat pump. Heat pump and refrigerator collectively called as heat pump. Now what is the statement for heat pump or refrigerator is, Clausius statement says you cannot have a heat pump in which the heat is transferred from low temperature body to high temperature body without investing any work from outside. So you cannot have that particular heat pump. Next is third law. Third law states that entropy of perfect crystal at temperature of 0 Kelvin is 0. Entropy is measured of disorder or randomness in closed system. At temperature of 0 Kelvin, the system does not contain any heat. All atoms and molecules in system are at their lowest energy point. As per third law, entropy of such system is exactly 0. So there are 4 laws, that is zeroth law, first law, second law and third law. Let's say A, B, C are 3 bodies and A and C are 2 bodies.
Decomposition. The process of breakdown of complex organic matter into inorganic substances like carbon dioxide, water, and nutrients is called decomposition. The organisms involved in this process are called decomposers. The most common decomposers in an ecosystem are fungi, bacteria, and some algae, few protozoans. Decomposition is largely an oxygen-requiring process. The rate of decomposition is controlled by chemical composition of detritus and climatic factors. The process of breaking down a substance into its constituent parts is called decomposition. In the nature, decomposition of dead organic matter takes place. It is also called putrefaction. It is brought about by the reducer organisms, namely bacteria and some fungi. These organisms break up the dead organic matter into A. Small organic molecules which they utilize themselves as nutrients. B. Inorganic compounds that are released into the environment. The rate of decomposition of organic compounds varies. For example, proteins, fats, and majority of carbohydrates decomposed rapidly, and cellulose, chitin, lignin, etc. decomposed slowly. The upper layer of soil is the principal site for decomposition process in terrestrial ecosystem. In aquatic bodies, bottom portion of the body is site for decomposition.
These are my sources for these videos. For our student activity, state what you have learned in this lesson in 5 to 10 sentences. Submit your output to our Google Classroom in 2 days. Thank you. I hope you can get helpful knowledge from this presentation. Good luck!